The rain fell in relentless sheets over Portland, turning the streets into mirrors of fractured light, and Evelyn Harper stood at the edge of the Burnside Bridge, wondering if one more step would dissolve her into the Willamette below. Her fingers, numb from the chill, clutched a crumpled note from Lena. "I can't carry your shadows anymore," the words blurring like the city skyline through her tears. In that moment, as thunder rolled low over the evergreens, she whispered to the empty air, "What if I'm the storm that never ends?" Evelyn had always been the quiet architect of her own unraveling. Born and raised in the fog-kissed suburbs of Beaverton, just west of Portland's eclectic heartbeat, she had built a life on blueprints and black coffee, designing sustainable homes that whispered promises of stability to families who could afford them. At 32, with her sharp jawline softened by exhaustion and her gray-blue eyes carrying the weight of unspoken regrets, she moved through her days like a ghost in her own story. Her apartment in the Pearl District overlooked the river, a sleek loft filled with half-finished sketches and potted ferns that thrived despite her neglect. But lately, the ferns seemed to mock her, their leaves curling toward sunlight she could no longer summon. It had started 6 months ago, in the amber glow of a late summer evening. Lena, with her cascade of auburn curls and laughter like wind chimes, had been Evelyn's anchor for 3 years. They met at a queer art walk in the Alberta Arts District, where Lena's pottery stall brimmed with earthy vessels that felt like extensions of her warm, unyielding spirit. Evelyn, drawn to the simplicity of clay against her precise lines, had bought a mismatched mug, and from there, their lives intertwined like the roots of the old oaks lining Multnomah Falls. Lena grounded her, pulled her from the drafting table to weekend hikes in the Columbia River Gorge, where mist rose like forgotten prayers from the basalt cliffs. But love, Evelyn learned, could erode like river rock under relentless current. Lena's patience frayed against Evelyn's silences, the way she would stare at blank walls during dinner, lost in the echo of her mother's voice. "You're too much, Evie, always dreaming too big and breaking too easy." Her father, a stoic millworker from rural Montana who traded mountains for Oregon's timberlands, had died when she was 12, leaving behind a toolbox of unspoken grief and a daughter who armored herself in logic. Lena called it her fortress of solitude. But what started as gentle coaxing turned to pleas, then arguments that shattered like dropped porcelain. The final fracture came on a rain-lashed night in October. They sat across from each other in the loft, the scent of chamomile tea gone cold between them. Lena's eyes, usually sparkling like the Willamette under bridge lights, were dull with defeat. "I love you, Evelyn, but I'm drowning in your pain. You have to let me in or let me go." Evelyn, her throat tight as a knotted rope, could only nod, the words "I'm sorry" dissolving on her tongue like mist. By morning, Lena was gone, her pottery pieces packed in newspaper, the mug Evelyn cherished left on the windowsill as a cruel talisman. In the weeks that followed, Portland's perpetual drizzle mirrored Evelyn's inner gray. She wandered the Saturday market under the Hawthorne Bridge, fingering handmade journals she had no intention of filling, or lost herself in the labyrinthine aisles of Powell's City of Books, where the scent of aged paper offered fleeting solace. Friends June, the boisterous barista with tattoos of wildflowers up her arms, and Harper, the soft-spoken librarian from the southeast, urged her to get back out there. But dating apps felt like salt in an open wound, profiles scrolling past like ghosts of what might have been. One fog-shrouded evening, as November's chill seeped through her raincoat, Evelyn downloaded the app on a whim. Her bio was terse: architect by day, stargazer by regret. Seeking someone who doesn't mind rainy bridges. She swiped left on the tech bros and the endless parade of flannel-clad hipsters, until a profile stopped her cold. Riley Voss, 35, with a profile photo of sun-dappled wildflowers framing a face that held the quiet strength of ancient redwoods. Herbalist and intuitive guide. Believer in the medicine of moss and moonlight. Let's brew something real. Her eyes, a deep hazel flecked with gold, seemed to pierce the screen, and beneath her bio a quote from Rumi: "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Evelyn's thumb hovered, heart thudding like distant thunder. A mystical healer? It sounded like the kind of nonsense peddled at the weekend farmers markets, crystals and sage bundles promising miracles for the price of a latte. Yet something in Riley's gaze tugged at the frayed edges of her soul, a promise of warmth in the gathering dark. She swiped right, and the match chimed like a bell in fog. Their first messages were tentative, like footsteps on wet leaves. Riley asked about her favorite bridge and Evelyn, surprised by the ease, replied with a photo of the steel bridge at twilight, its arches glowing against the bruised sky. "It's where I go to remember I'm still here," she typed, vulnerability slipping through her fingers like rain. Riley responded with a voice note, her voice low and melodic, laced with the faint lilt of someone who'd grown up in the rolling hills of North Carolina before transplanting to Oregon's wilds. "That bridge knows your secrets, Evelyn. But so does the river. It carries them away if you let it." By the end of the week they had a date. A walk along the Forest Park trails at dawn, where the city's edge blurred into ancient forest. Evelyn arrived early, her boots sinking into the mossy path, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. She clutched a thermos of coffee, her nerves humming like power lines in a storm. What was she doing here, chasing magic in a woman who probably read tarot cards for a living? But as Riley emerged from the mist, tall and lithe, her dark hair braided with feathers, wearing a woolen shawl over jeans faded to the color of autumn leaves, Evelyn felt the first crack in her armor. Riley's smile was a sunrise over the gorge, slow and illuminating. "You look like you've been carrying the weight of the world," she said, not as accusation but invitation, her hazel eyes holding Evelyn's without flinching. They walked in companionable silence at first, the trail winding through ferns that unfurled like green prayers, Douglas firs towering as silent witnesses. Riley spoke of her work, not as mysticism but as tending, herbal tinctures brewed from nettle and yarrow, sessions where she guided people to listen to the quiet voice beneath the storm. Born in the tobacco fields of Asheville, she'd fled a childhood of Bible Belt expectations, finding solace in the apothecary arts of her grandmother, a woman who whispered to plants as if they held the stars' secrets. Evelyn listened, her guarded heart thawing in the dappled light. She shared fragments, Lena's laugh, the sting of the note, expecting pity, but Riley only nodded, plucking a sprig of wild mint and pressing it into her palm. "Grief is like this mint," she said softly. "It grows wild, overtakes the garden. But if you harvest it right, it flavors everything sweeter." For the first time in months Evelyn laughed, a sound brittle but real, echoing off the moss-covered boulders. As the sun crested the ridge, painting the canopy in gold, they sat on a fallen log overlooking a creek that babbled like forgotten confessions. Riley's hand brushed Evelyn's, tentative as a leaf on water, and in that touch Evelyn glimpsed something fragile and fierce, a possibility that healing might not be solitary, that the light could enter through another's gaze. But as they parted at the trailhead, Riley's truck rumbling away toward her cabin in the hills, doubt crept back like evening fog. Was this real? Or just another story she told herself to stave off the dark? Back in her loft that night, Evelyn unrolled her sketches, the lines blurring under lamplight. The city hummed beyond the windows, a symphony of distant trains and rain patter, but inside the silence pressed like an uninvited guest. She thought of Riley's hands, callous from grinding herbs, and wondered if magic was merely the courage to believe in touch. Sleep came fitfully, dreams woven with bridges and wildflowers, the river whispering, "Let go." Weeks blurred into a rhythm of rain and revelation, each encounter with Riley peeling back another layer of Evelyn's guarded heart, until the fragile trust they'd built began to fracture under the weight of old wounds. Their second date unfolded in Riley's world, a modest apothecary shop tucked into a converted barn on the outskirts of Portland, where the air hummed with the earthy tang of drying lavender and the faint smoke of smoldering Palo Santo. Evelyn arrived with a bottle of Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley, a gesture of normalcy amid the crystals and candlelit altars that lined the wooden shelves. Riley greeted her at the door, apron dusted with calendula petals, her braid loose now, strands framing a face flushed from the hearth's warmth. "You brought wine," Riley said, her voice a gentle lilt, eyes crinkling like sunlight on water. "And I brought stories from the garden." They settled on mismatched cushions by the fire, the bottle uncorked, glasses clinking like tentative promises. Riley spoke of her migration west 10 years prior, fleeing the suffocating piety of her Asheville upbringing, where her queerness was a whisper drowned in church bells and her grandmother's herbal lore was dismissed as witchcraft by aunts who clutched their pearls. "I came here for the rain," she confessed, swirling her glass. "It washes everything clean, doesn't it? No holding on to yesterday's dust." Evelyn nodded, the firelight dancing in her gray-blue eyes, but the words stuck like burrs. She envied Riley's ease with the unseen, the way she attributed synchronicities to the universe's gentle nudge, rather than Evelyn's cold calculus of cause and effect. As the night deepened, Riley pulled out a deck of oracle cards, their edges worn soft as river stones. Not for fortune, she clarified, shuffling with hands that moved like weaving vines. For reflection. Draw one if you want. Hesitant, Evelyn complied, flipping the top card. A woman standing at a crossroads, shadows lengthening behind her, a single lantern in her grasp. The threshold, Riley read, her tone reverent. It speaks of choices, of stepping into the unknown where the old self falls away. Evelyn's laugh was sharp, edged with the bitterness she'd nursed since Lena's departure. Choices? I chose love once and it left me in pieces. What's the magic in that? The words hung heavy, the fire crackling its disapproval. Riley's expression softened, not with defensiveness but a quiet ache. Magic is an absence of pain, Evelyn. It's the alchemy of turning lead into gold, the way hurt forges us stronger, if we let it. But Evelyn pulled back, the card crumpling slightly in her fist. She drained her glass, the wine tart on her tongue, and changed the subject to the shop's renovations, her architect's mind mapping beams and joists. Riley followed, her laughter a bridge, but the rift lingered, unseen as roots beneath soil. By their fourth outing, a hike to the Eagle Creek trailhead, where waterfalls plunged like silver veins through verdant cliffs, the cracks widened. The path was slick with recent rain, mist rising from the canyon like breath from a sleeping giant. Evelyn, buoyed by Riley's presence, shared more. The Montana summers visiting her father's family, where she'd trace constellations on barn roofs, dreaming of structures that touched the sky. I wanted to build something eternal, she said, pausing at Punch Bowl Falls, the water's roar drowning her voice. But all my bridges lead back to the same broken place. Riley knelt by the pool's edge, trailing fingers in the froth, her shawl slipping to reveal the curve of her shoulder, strong from years of tending gardens. Eternal isn't in stone, love. It's in the flow, the way this water carves canyons over time, gentle but unrelenting. She stood, offering a hand, and Evelyn took it, the contact electric as lightning over the gorge. For a moment they lingered, foreheads nearly touching, the spray beating on their skin like unshed tears. Riley's lips brushed her temple, a feather-light promise, and Evelyn leaned in, heart pounding against the cage of her ribs. But as they descended, Evelyn's doubts surged like the creek in flood. That night, alone in her loft, she scrolled through old photos of Lena, smiling at a food cart pod in the Pearl, arms wrapped around Evelyn under string lights at a pride after-party. The guilt twisted, hot and familiar. How can I feel this pull toward Riley when Lena's echo still haunts the walls? She texted Riley a cancellation for their next plan, citing a deadline, but the truth gnawed. Fear of the vulnerability Riley evoked, the way her mysticism forced Evelyn to confront the chaos beneath her ordered world. Riley's reply came swift, laced with that unyielding warmth. Deadlines can wait, but hearts shouldn't. Take the space you need. I'll be here brewing tea for the rain. Evelyn stared at the screen, tears blurring the words, the city lights fracturing beyond her window like her resolve. She wandered to the kitchen, brewing chamomile in Lena's abandoned mug, the steam rising like ghosts. In the quiet, she admitted the fracture. Not just from loss, but from the terror of rebuilding on shifting ground. The pouring rain that weekend mirrored her turmoil, sheets lashing the windows as if to scour the city clean. June called, her voice crackling over the line from the coffee shop. Ev, you've been dodging everyone. What's eating you? Evelyn confessed the dates, the healer with her cards and herbs, and June's response was a mix of skepticism and solidarity. Sounds woo as hell, but if she makes you feel seen, lean in. You've earned a little magic after Lena's mess. Yet leaning felt like falling. Evelyn drove to the coast on impulse, the winding road through Tillamook State Forest a blur of emerald and gray. Haystack Rock loomed on Cannon Beach like a sentinel of forgotten tides, waves crashing with the fury she couldn't voice. She walked the shore, shells crunching underfoot, the salt wind whipping her hair. In the foam's retreat, she imagined Lena's face dissolving into the surf, but Riley's emerged unbidden, hazel eyes steady as the horizon. Back in Portland by dusk, her phone buzzed. A photo from Riley. A bouquet of rain-kissed dahlias from her garden, captioned for the woman who builds bridges. Even when they're hard to cross. Evelyn's chest tightened, a sob escaping as she traced the petals on the screen. The fracture deepened that night, sleep evading her in waves of what-ifs. What if Riley's light was just another illusion? What if her own shadows were too vast to share? By mid-December, the strain showed in stolen moments. A coffee at Tin Shed Garden Cafe, where Riley's fingers lingered on Evelyn's across the scarred oak table, only for Evelyn to withdraw, citing the chill. "It's not you," she murmured, gray eyes averted to the garden's frost-laced herbs. "It's me, the wreckage I dragged behind." Riley's silence was a bomb and a blade, her hand withdrawing slowly, leaving the space between them vast as the gorge at dawn. The breaking point came on Solstice Eve, under a sky heavy with promise. Riley invited her to a small gathering at her cabin, a circle of lanterns and shared stories among Portland's queer healers and artists. Evelyn arrived late, the gravel drive crunching under tires slick with ice, her heart a drumbeat of dread. The cabin glowed like a beacon, windows fogged with laughter, and the scent of mulled cider wafting out. Inside, Riley moved like grace incarnate, her dark hair loose, a garnet pendant catching the firelight against her olive skin. But as the group formed a circle, passing a talking stick carved from cedar, Evelyn's walls crumbled. A woman shared of lost love, her voice trembling like aspen leaves, and Evelyn's throat closed, visions of Lena's note flashing like lightning. She slipped out to the porch, the cold biting deep, stars pricking the velvet sky above the firs. Riley followed, wordless, draping a quilt over her shoulders, their breaths mingling in white plumes. "I can't do this," Evelyn whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. "Your world, it's too open, too full of light I don't deserve. I'm still bleeding from the last one." Riley's eyes, gold-flecked in the lantern glow, held no judgment, only the steady pulse of rivers carving stone. "Deserve? Evelyn, healing isn't earned, it's offered. But I won't chase shadows if you're not ready to step into yours." The words landed like the first snow, soft but settling heavy. Evelyn drove home through the dark, the cabin's light fading in her rearview, a piece of her heart left buried in the frost. The fracture was complete now, not a shatter but a slow seep, the magic sheet glimpsed slipping through her fingers like sand. In her loft, she curled under blankets, the rain a lullaby of loss, wondering if some wounds were meant to scar eternal. January's frost etched silver filigree on Portland's windows, and in the brittle quiet following their solstice unraveling, Evelyn Harper found herself adrift in the city's winter hush, the echo of Riley's words carving deeper than any blueprint. She threw herself into work, drafting elevations for an eco-housing project in the Hawthorne district, lines sharp and unyielding as her resolve to forget. The office, a converted warehouse buzzing with young architects and the aroma of fair trade espresso, became her refuge, colleagues' banter a distraction from the hollow in her chest. Yet at night, when the Willamette's dark waters lapped against the seawall below her loft, Riley's face haunted her. Those hazel eyes, patient as ancient oaks, offering a hand she had refused. The encounter came unbidden, on a slate-gray afternoon in early February, when Portland's skies wept ice that turned to slush underfoot. Evelyn sought solace in the Oregon Nikkei Legacy Center, a sanctuary of whispered histories amid the chaos of Old Town. She wandered the exhibits, fingers tracing timelines of resilience, Japanese-American families rebuilding after internment, their stories of quiet defiance mirroring her own fractured path. In the tea room, amid the steam of matcha and the murmur of elders, she looked up to find Riley across the low table, cradling a ceramic bowl, her braid tucked neatly, a wool scarf the color of sage draped over her shoulders. Riley's arrival felt like fate's wry smile, or perhaps the universe's insistent nudge, as she often called it. "I come here monthly," she said simply, her voice threading through the room's warmth like smoke from a peace pipe, "for the stories that remind me healing is collective." Evelyn's pulse quickened, caught between flight and the magnetic pull of those gold-flecked eyes. She nodded, stirring her tea, the green liquid swirling like unspoken apologies. What followed was no grand reconciliation, but a tentative threading. Shared sips, Riley recounting her grandmother's migration from the Carolinas, blending hoodoo whispers with herbal hymns passed down through bloodlines scarred by segregation. "I didn't expect you here," Evelyn admitted, her gray-blue gaze lifting at last, vulnerability flickering like candle flame. Riley's smile was soft, unhurried. "The city has a way of circling us back, doesn't it? Like the river finding its way to sea." They parted with a brush of knuckles, no promises but the seed planted. A quiet invitation to meet again, not as dates but wanderers sharing the same fog-shrouded path. From there the meetings unfolded like seasons turning. A chance overlap at the Portland Saturday market, where Riley's stall brimmed with salves and smudged sticks, and Evelyn lingered, buying a jar of rose-infused balm for hands chapped by winter drafts. "For the builder's touch," Riley murmured, her fingers lingering on the exchange, warm against the chill. Another time under the dome of the Lansu Chinese garden, amid koi ponds and pavilions veiled in mist, they walked stone paths, Evelyn confessing fragments of her Montana roots, the vast skies over her father's ranch, where she'd first learned to trace stars as maps to escape inward storms. Riley listened without the healer's toolkit, no cards or crystals, just presence, her olive-skinned hand occasionally grazing Evelyn's arm, grounding as the garden's ancient scholar trees. "Your father's silence," she reflected one afternoon, as snow dusted the willow branches. "It wasn't abandonment. Sometimes men like him carried mountains on their backs, too heavy to share." Evelyn's throat tightened, the words unlocking a rusted gate. She spoke of the funeral, the Montana wind howling through the graveyard, her 12-year-old self clutching a hammer he'd left behind, its weight a talisman of what she'd never mend. In return, Riley unveiled her own scars, not in dramatic unveiling but in the poetry of pauses. Over cider at a southeast taproom, fairy lights strung like constellations overhead, she described the Asheville nights when church elders deemed her unnatural, her first love. A poet named Clara, fleeing under moonlight after threats from kin. "I learned early that love can be a healer or a hollow," Riley said, her hazel eyes distant as the blue ridge peaks she'd left. "Clara taught me tenderness, but the leaving taught me to root deeper." Evelyn reached across the scarred bar top, lacing fingers, the contact a bridge spanning their shared chasms. These encounters wove a fragile tapestry, neither pursuit nor retreat, but a slow convergence. Evelyn's dreams shifted, no longer Lena's shadow, but Riley's laughter mingling with the gorge's roar, wildflowers blooming in the cracks of her sketches. Yet doubt lingered, a winter thorn. Was this connection born of loneliness, or the genuine spark Riley ignited? One evening as they shared a bench in Washington Park, cherry blossoms tentative against the cold, Evelyn voiced it. "I keep waiting for the other shoe. The moment your magic fades and I'm left holding echoes again." Riley turned, her face illuminated by the setting sun's amber wash over the Japanese maples. "Magic isn't mine to give, Evelyn. It's in the spaces we create together. The way your honesty calls mine forth." She pressed a small vial into Evelyn's palm. "Elderflower elixir for clearing the fog. No incantation, just trust." That night Evelyn uncorked it under her loft's pendant light, the scent evoking spring's first breath, and wept, not from sorrow but release. As March thawed the frost, their paths intertwined more deliberately. A foraging walk in Tryon Creek State Park, baskets filling with fiddlehead ferns and miner's lettuce, Riley teaching Evelyn to identify the earth's quiet gifts. "See how the nettle stings but brews into strength," she said, her braids swinging as she knelt in loamy earth. Evelyn mirrored her, knees muddied, the act grounding her racing mind. Laughter came easier now, bubbling up as they tripped over roots, Riley's hand steadying her waist, the touch lingering like sunlight through leaves. In these moments Evelyn glimpsed the woman beyond the healer. Riley's quiet ferocity, honed from years of holding space for others' fractures while mending her own in solitude. One rain-cleared dawn, atop Council Crest with its panoramic sweep of Mount Hood's snow-capped majesty, Riley faltered, admitting the isolation of her gifts, how clients saw the mystic but few the woman weary from carrying their loads. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm healing anyone but myself," she confessed, voice barely above the wind's hush. Evelyn pulled her close, arms wrapping the wool of her coat, Portland sprawling below like a map of possibilities. "You're healing me," she whispered, the words a vow against the vast sky. Their lips met then, tentative as the season's first bloom, soft, searching, tasting of salt and elderflower. No thunderclap but a quiet unfurling, the city awakening around them in hues of rose and gold. From that crest the journey shifted. No longer parallel paths but a shared trail, winding through vulnerabilities laid bare. Evelyn's sketches evolved, incorporating organic curves inspired by Riley's gardens, homes that breathed with vine-wrapped trellises and sunlit atria. Riley, in turn, found Evelyn's precision anchoring her ethereal drift, co-designing a community herb garden for the apothecary, their hands soil-stained and entwined. Yet the meeting was not without tempests. A late March storm unearthed old ghosts. Lena's email, an olive branch from across the country, stirring Evelyn's undercurrents. She shared it with Riley over tea in the cabin, the fire's glow casting long shadows. "Part of me wants to reply to close the circle," she admitted, voice trembling. Riley nodded, no possession in her gaze, only the steady light of understanding. "Circles close when we honor the arc they've traced. Whatever you choose, I'm here. Not to fix but to walk beside." In that grace Evelyn chose silence not from fear, but forgiveness's first bloom. The encounter with Riley had become a mirror, reflecting not just pain's persistence, but the power in mutual gaze, the way two souls scarred and seeking could kindle light from shared dark. April's rain softened to a verdant haze over Portland, coaxing dogwoods into reluctant bloom along the streets of the Nob Hill neighborhood, and in the gentle unraveling of spring, Evelyn and Riley began the delicate work of understanding, not as observers, but as participants in each other's unfinished symphonies. Their days wove together like the Willamette's tributaries, separate yet converging. Mornings with Evelyn at her drafting table, Riley arriving with fresh-baked scones laced with lemon balm, the loft filling with the scent of citrus and possibility. "Fuel for the builder," Riley would say, kissing Evelyn's temple, her lips a whisper of warmth against the cool focus of graphite and vellum. But understanding demanded excavation, and the first layers unearthed were laced with the grit of forgiveness withheld. It surfaced one overcast afternoon in Riley's garden, behind the apothecary barn, where raised beds brimmed with chamomile and echinacea, their petals trembling in the breeze like hesitant confessions. They knelt side by side, weeding the soil, Evelyn's hands precise as her lines, pulling intruders with surgical care. Riley's earthy and assured, turning clumps to aerate the roots. The sun broke through sporadically, gilding the scene in fleeting gold, but Evelyn's silence grew heavy, her movements jerky as buried thorns. "It's Lena, isn't it?" Riley ventured, wiping dirt from her olive cheeks, her hazel eyes steady as the garden's perennial sage. Evelyn paused, a dandelion's taproot snapping in her grip, the white sap milky as unresolved tears. "Not just her. It's me, holding this grudge like a blueprint I can't revise. She left because I was a fortress, walls up against the world. How do I forgive that in myself?" The words tumbled out, raw as the upturned earth, and Riley set down her trowel, shifting to face her fully, knees pressing into the loamy bed. "Forgiveness isn't erasure, Evelyn. It's tilling the soil, acknowledging the weeds without letting them choke the growth." She reached for Evelyn's hand, cradling it between her own, thumbs tracing the calluses from endless sketches. "Tell me the wall story. Not the facts but the feeling." And so, under the dogwood's pink canopy, Evelyn did. The childhood afternoons in Beaverton, barricaded in her room while her mother railed against dreams deemed impractical, her father's absence a void filled with silence. "I built to protect, to prove I could hold steady when everything else crumbled. But with Lena those walls kept us both out." Riley listened, her presence a balm, nodding as if each word were a seed worth planting. When Evelyn fell quiet, tears carving tracks through garden dust on her freckled cheeks, Riley drew her into an embrace, the scent of soil and lavender enveloping them. "Those walls kept you safe once," she murmured, chin resting atop Evelyn's chestnut head. "But safety can become a cage. Forgiving yourself means opening the gate, not tearing it down, but trusting someone to walk through." They remained there as the light slanted low, hands linked in the dirt, the garden a witness to the first softening. This understanding ripened in shared rituals, small acts that bridged their worlds. Evenings found them at the Hollywood Farmers Market, baskets swinging as they haggled over heirloom tomatoes and artisanal cheeses, Riley bartering with vendors in her melodic drawl while Evelyn sketched quick vignettes of the crowd, queer families with rainbow pins, elders trading recipes like heirlooms. One such twilight as stalls shuddered under strings of Edison bulbs, a busker strummed a cover of Joni Mitchell's A Case of You, the melody curling through the air like smoke. Evelyn froze, the lyrics evoking Lena's ghost, and Riley, sensing the tremor, pulled her to a quiet corner by the market's mural wall, painted with cascading ferns and hidden eyes. "Sing it with me," Riley urged, voice low, her fingers interlacing with Evelyn's. Hesitant at first, Evelyn joined, their harmonies tentative, Riley's rich alto grounding Evelyn's clear soprano, until the song became a release, words of longing transmuted into something shared. Laughter followed, breathless and genuine, as they wandered to a nearby taqueria, tacos steaming under neon glow. Over bites of cilantro lace carnitas, Evelyn admitted, "I used to think forgiveness was weakness. Letting go meant losing control." Riley's eyes sparkled, gold flecks catching the light. "It's the opposite. It's choosing who holds the trowel with you." The deeper unraveling came in May, when Montana called Evelyn home, not in joy but reckoning. Her mother's letter arrived like a late frost. Frail script announcing a fall, a hospital stay in Billings, the Big Sky State sprawling indifferent. Evelyn booked the flight on impulse, Riley driving her to PDX under skies bruised with thunderheads. At the terminal, amid the clamor of announcements and rolling suitcases, Riley pressed a small pouch into her hand, quartz and dried sage, tied with twine. "For clarity," she said, kissing Evelyn deeply, an anchor against the unknown. "And remember, forgiveness flows both ways." The return to Montana was a descent into memory's canyon, the ranch house on the outskirts of town unchanged, peeling clabbered, the windmill creaking like an old lament. Her mother, Lydia, lay in the spare room, silver hair fanned on the pillow, eyes the same gray-blue as Evelyn's but dimmed by decades of quiet resentments. "You came," Lydia rasped, hand trembling as she clasped Evelyn's. The days blurred. Hospital visits to the Billings clinic, where monitors beeped like accusatory metronomes. Evenings sifting through her father's toolbox, rusted relics evoking his wordless love. But the conversations, halting at first over weak coffee in the kitchen, cracked open the vault. "I pushed you away because I was scared," Lydia confessed one dusk, as the sun bled orange over the plains, casting long shadows through lace curtains. "Your dreams reminded me of what I buried. Wanting more than this land, this life." Evelyn's throat ached, the weight of years pressing. "And I built walls because your fear became mine. But I forgive you, Mom. For the silence, for the storms." Tears mingled, hands clasped over the scarred oak table. The act not a dam breaking but a river finding its course, slow, meandering but inexorable. Riley's texts anchored her across the miles. Photos of Portland's riotous rhododendrons, voice notes recounting apothecary tales, ending always with "You're tilling sacred ground." Returning to Oregon felt like emergence, the plane touching down amid the Cascade foothills, Evelyn's heart lighter though scarred. She drove straight to the cabin, finding Riley in the garden at twilight, silhouetted against Firefly's first dance. Without words, Evelyn pulled her close, the pouch returned to Riley's palm. "I forgave her, and in doing so myself. Because of you, waiting in the light." Riley's embrace was fierce, tears salting their kiss, the garden humming approval. That night, under a canopy of stars visible from the hilltop deck, they shared stories by lantern light. Evelyn's Montana thaw, Riley's own forgiving of Asheville's ghosts, the poet Clara's shadow long faded into gratitude. Understanding bloomed fullest in forgiveness's grace. Not absolution but acceptance, the way two women, once adrift in their own tempests, could stand as co-tillers, hands dirty with the beautiful mess of growth. As summer whispered near, their bond deepened in these illuminations. A weekend retreat to the Oregon coast, where they walked the dunes of Oswald West State Park, waves crashing like applause, forgiving the tides their endless retreat. Evelyn sketched seashell mandalas in the sand, Riley inscribing intentions with driftwood. To understand is to heal is to love. Back in the city, they volunteered at a queer youth center in the southeast, Evelyn leading design workshops on building safe spaces, Riley facilitating circles on intuitive self-care. In the eyes of those young faces, wary-wide with wonder, they saw reflections of their own paths. The forgiveness extended a ripple outward. Yet the work was ongoing. Forgiveness not a destination but a daily dawn. One humid June evening, as they picnicked on the banks of the sandy river, wild salmon grilling over a portable fire, a sudden squall drove them under a sheltering alder. Huddled close, rain drumming above, Evelyn traced Riley's jawline, voice soft. I used to think love demanded perfection. Now I see it's in the forgiving, the way we keep showing up, weeds and all. Riley's laugh was a river's song, pulling Evelyn into a kiss that tasted of smoke and salt, their hearts sinking like tides to moon. In this mutual mercy they discovered the true alchemy, not one healing the other, but both emerging transformed, wounds transfigured into wisdom's fertile soil. Summer's golden haze settled over Portland like a benevolent veil, the city's pulse quickening with festivals and farmers' markets, and in this season of abundance, Evelyn Harper felt the stirrings of rebirth, not as a sudden phoenix rise, but a gradual greening, roots pushing through once barren soil under Riley Voss's steady gaze. Their life together took shape in quiet evolutions. The loft now echoed with Riley's herbal experiments, jars of infusing tinctures lining shelves beside Evelyn's drafting tools, a harmonious blend of precision and poetry. Mornings began with shared yoga on the balcony, Evelyn's lithe form stretching toward the rising sun over the West Hills, Riley's breath guiding her deeper into presence, bodies attuned like vines to trellis. Rebirth announced itself subtly, in the way Evelyn's sketches transformed, once rigid with right angles, now curving with organic grace, inspired by the apothecary's wild borders. She pitched a community center designed to her firm, a queer-inclusive space in the Alberta Arts District with living green walls and intuitive nooks for reflection, her presentation laced with passion that drew nods from skeptics. This isn't just architecture, she told the room, voice steady as the Columbia's flow. It's rebirth, a place where wounds become windows. Approval came swift, and in the afterglow, over celebratory pho at a Division Street spot, Riley raised her glass of jasmine tea. You built it, love. From the inside out. Evelyn's inner landscape shifted too, the fortress walls yielding to archways. Nightmares of Lena's departure faded, replaced by dreams of expansive skies. Montana's vastness merged with Oregon's misty gorges, Riley's hand always there, a compass in the starlit expanse. She journaled now, pages filling with unfiltered pores. Gratitudes for Lydia's mending letters from Billings, affirmations scrawled in Riley's looping script during lazy afternoons. I am the river carving my own canyon, one read, tucked into the elderflower vial like a talisman. This renewal extended outward, in acts of creation that bound them closer. They co-launched a workshop series at the Apothecary, Bridges of the Heart, blending Evelyn's structural wisdom with Riley's intuitive arts. Participants mapping personal blueprints while brewing elixirs for emotional flow. The first session, under a harvest moon in late July, drew a circle of women, survivors of heartbreak, mothers navigating transitions, elders reclaiming silent stories. Evelyn facilitated the drawing, her gray-blue eyes alight as lines took form. Riley led the tastings, her voice a soothing current amid shared vulnerabilities. One attendee, a young artist named Cora with ink-stained fingers and eyes shadowed by recent loss, lingered after. You two. You make it seem possible, she said, gesturing to their intertwined hands. Evelyn felt a surge, not pride but purpose, the rebirth rippling beyond her skin. That night, driving home through the glowing streets of Selwood, Riley's head on her shoulder at a stoplight, Evelyn whispered, "This is what it feels like to grow beyond the break." Yet rebirth carried its own tempests, echoes of old fractures testing the new growth. August brought a heat wave, the air thick as grief's residue, and with it, a flare-up from Evelyn's past. An unexpected run-in with Lena at the Waterfront Blues Festival. The crowd pulsed under the Hawthorne Bridge, bass thumping like a second heartbeat, when Evelyn spotted her. Auburn curls tied back, laughing with a new partner amid the food trucks. Time fractured. Evelyn froze, the old wound throbbing like a bruise pressed anew. She slipped away to the river's edge, knees drawn to chest on the grassy bank, the Willamettes lap a mocking lullaby. Riley found her there, threading through revelers with unerring instinct, dropping beside her without question. "Talk me through it," she said, hand on Evelyn's back, circles tracing spine. The words spilled, jealousy not of the new love, but of the ease Lena seemed to wear unscarred. "What if I'm always this, half-healed, waiting for the next wave?" Riley's response was a gathering close, foreheads touching, the festival's distant horns fading to white noise. "Waves come, yes. But look at you, rooted here, not swept away. That's the rebirth. Not invincibility but resilience, blooming where you stand." They remained until stars pricked the twilight, Evelyn's breath's evening. The encounter a reminder that growth thrived in tension, petals unfurling against the sun's blaze. Emboldened, Evelyn embraced creation's call. She enrolled in a pottery class at Oregon College of Art and Craft, clay yielding under her palms like forgiveness made tangible. Riley joined sporadically, their wheels spinning side by side, mugs emerging misshapen but cherished, Evelyn's precise, etched with bridge motifs. Riley's organic, thumbprints embedded like love's marks. One evening, glazing pieces in the studio's warm kiln glow, Evelyn molded a vessel wide as a heart, whispering intentions into the wet earth. "For the woman who taught me to hold without walls." Firing it days later, the transformation mirrored her own raw form to resilient sheen. Their intimacy deepened in these forges, nights spent exploring not just bodies, but souls' quiet landscapes. Under the cabin's slanted roof, rain pattering like applause, they mapped each other's scars with fingertips, Evelyn tracing the faint line on Riley's collarbone from a childhood fall in the Carolina woods. Riley kissing the freckles across Evelyn's shoulders, constellations of sun-spent summers. "You're my wild garden," Evelyn murmured once, as dawn filtered through gingham curtains. Riley's dark hair splayed on the pillow like fertile soil. Laughter followed, soft and shared. The rebirth in their union a daily dawn. As September's equinox approached, they journeyed to the Three Capes scenic route, a coastal pilgrimage where waves sculpted sea stacks like nature's cathedrals. Hiking the short loop to Cape Meare's lighthouse, mist cloaking the Pacific's roar, Evelyn paused at the overlook, wind tugging her chestnut strands. "I feel it now, the turning," she said, Riley's arm around her waist, the horizon endless blue. "Not fixed but free. Like I've shed the old skin." Riley's hazel gaze held the sea's depth. "We both have. Together." They scattered wildflower seeds along the trail, yarrow and lupin, symbols of renewal, watching them catch in the breeze, destined to root in rocky cracks. Back in Portland, Evelyn's Montana mother visited, the three women sharing tea in the loft, Lydia's eyes widening at the garden view expanse. "You've built something real, Evie," she said, clasping hands across generations. "Forgiveness is fruit. Not perfection but presence." Rebirth, Evelyn learned, was iterative, a spiral upward, each loop incorporating the last's lessons. In Riley's arms she stepped fully into it, the woman once adrift now a force of quiet creation, her light not borrowed but kindled from within. October's amber veil draped Portland in nostalgia's glow, leaves carpeting the sidewalks of the Pearl District like a mosaic of farewells and fresh starts. And as the season turned its contemplative corner, Evelyn and Riley stood at the threshold of light's full embrace. A radiant unfolding where their shared healing wove into enduring warmth. The city, with its craft breweries aglow and pumpkin-spiced winds whispering through Selwood's bridges, became the canvas for their deepened harmony. No longer navigators of separate storms, but co-captains charting sunlit waters. Evelyn's rebirth crested in professional bloom. Her community center design, now christened Haven House, broke ground in the Alberta Arts District, a ceremony under crisp skies where shovels turned earth amid cheers from queer advocates and local elders. She stood at the site's edge, hard hat perched jauntily on her chestnut waves, Riley beside her in a sage-green coat, their fingers laced beneath the podium. "This isn't just walls," Evelyn addressed the gathering, voice carrying like the river's song. "It's a beacon, light after shadow, home after heartache." Applause rippled, but the true illumination was Riley's proud squeeze, hazel eyes shimmering with unspoken "you did this." Their home life mirrored this luminosity. The loft expanded with Riley's touches, a wall of hanging terrariums catching morning light in prisms, a communal sketchbook on the coffee table where they doodled dreams, Evelyn's precise elevations beside Riley's fluid herb illustrations. Evenings unfolded in ritual ease. cooking farm-to-table feasts from the Hollywood market, Evelyn chopping kale with architect's focus while Riley simmered bone broths infused with rasher for vitality. Over candlelit meals, conversations meandered like forest park trails. From Lydia's improving health in Montana, letters now laced with pride, to Riley's expanding apothecary, now offering mobile healing circles for Portland's unhoused youth. The light's warmth shone brightest in moments of unscripted grace. One fog-lifted Sunday they cycled the Springwater corridor, the trail unfurling through wetlands where herons stalked reeds like patient sages. Stopping at an oxbow lake, baskets unpacked with cheese and figs, Evelyn leaned against Riley, head on her shoulder, the water's mirror reflecting skies of unbroken blue. "I used to see my reflection as fractured," she confessed, tracing ripples with a stick. "Now it's whole because of us." Riley's arm tightened, her laugh a melody against the cattail's rustle. "We're the magic, Evelyn. Two flames feeding one fire." This realization echoed in their intimacy, a tender evolution from tentative touches to profound communion. Nights in the cabin, fire crackling in the stone hearth, they explored with the reverence of artists unveiling masterpieces. Evelyn's fingers mapping the curve of Riley's spine, eliciting sighs like wine through pines. Riley's lips charting the freckled map of Evelyn's collarbone, drawing forth murmurs of wonder. No rush, only presence. Bodies as landscapes, hearts as horizons, the act a celebration of scars transmuted to strength. Autumn's harvest brought communal light, their bridges of the heart workshop swelling to capacity, stories shared under harvest moons at the apothecary. Women forging bonds over clay and cards, tears yielding to triumphs. Cora, the young artist from the first circle, returned as facilitator, her own rebirth a testament. A gallery show born from sessions, pieces titled Threshold Blooms. At the opening in a Northwest gallery, amid clinking glasses and jazz undertones, Evelyn and Riley toasted her, their pride a shared glow. "See how it spreads," Riley whispered, nuzzling Evelyn's ear amid the crowd. "Our light, reflected infinite." Yet the path held its hoedowns, subtle shadows to honor the light's depth. November's early dark stirred Evelyn's old rhythms, a deadline crunch leaving her hollow-eyed at the drafting table. Riley noticed, brewing golden milk with turmeric and star anise, drawing her to the balcony where city lights twinkled like distant kin. "Breathe with me," she guided, hands on Evelyn's waist, inhalations sinking to the night's hush. The release came in waves. Not collapse but clarity, Evelyn emerging with renewed vigor. The project refined in Dawn's fresh gaze. Riley's vulnerabilities surfaced too, a rare eclipse when a client's crisis, echoing her Asheville losses, left her drained, curled on the cabin rug like a wilting fern. Evelyn, once the fortress, now the nurturer, lit candles and played Mitchell's Blue, holding space with chamomile compresses and stories of Montana's resilient plains. "You're allowed to bend," she soothed, stroking dark strands. "I'll hold the straight." By morning Riley rose renewed, their embrace a reaffirmation. Healing's reciprocity, light's mutual kindle. As Thanksgiving neared, they hosted a gathering, June and Harper from Evelyn's circle, apothecary friends, even a video call from Lydia, her face pixel-bright from Billings. The loft brimmed with laughter and pie, scents of sage-roasted turkey mingling with mulled wine. Toasts circled, to bridges built, to shadows shed. Later, clearing plates, Evelyn caught Riley's eye across the steam, a silent vow passing. "This is our light enduring." Winter's solstice approached, full circle from their fracture, and they marked it with a private rite at Multnomah Falls. Moonlight silvered the mist, the cascade thundering benediction as they stood hand in hand on the viewing bridge. Riley unpacked a thermos of elderflower cordial, toasting to the magic we discovered in each other. Evelyn's gray-blue eyes, once storm-veiled, now clear as mountain streams, met hers. No more trying, just being together. The year closed in quiet radiance, Portland's holiday lights mirroring their inner glow. Walks under the steel bridge where Evelyn once teetered on edges, now arm in arm with Riley, breaths visible as promises kept. Dreams wove forward, a joint venture, perhaps, architecture infused with herbal havens, travels to Asheville's healing hills, Montana's starlit ranches. But the truest light was present. Two women reborn in mutual mercy, their love a hearth against any chill. In the end, the magic wasn't in mysticism or blueprints, but in the way they healed each other, tenderly, tenaciously toward an endless dawn of warmth and wonder.